Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting for December 15th, 2021, and we're beginning at 6:01 p.m. At this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda, and I'll ask councillors, are there any emergent items from any of the councillors tonight? Anything at home, Councillor Montgomery, Deputy Mayor?
No, thank you.
Okay. Administration? Sorry, no. Thank you. Then I'd like a motion to confirm as presented.
I will so move.
Thank you.
I will so move.
Thank you. We have a motion to confirm the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have no presentations or recognitions. Oh, sorry, we do have presentations and recognitions. My apologies. Mr. Legore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I'd just like to recognize the town has over 150 very dedicated employees, outstanding individuals that do an outstanding job for this community every day. I apologize to the members of the gallery behind me that I have my back to them. I'd like to call up Bass, first of all, if I could, please. Everyone knows Bass Owl, raised in this community. Last spring, we had a vacancy at the fire hall. We had no deputy chief and no fire chief. I called Bass. He was on a ski hill at Fernie. Without hesitation, he stepped up and assumed the role of interim fire chief and did an outstanding job in bringing stabilization to our fire department and building a great team even greater there. And I just want to thank Bass and recognize him publicly for what he done. Thank you, Bass, very much. Thank you. Next off, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to recognize Kaylee, if I could, please. And this is probably Kirk's greatest hire in his career with the town. This outstanding lady has embraced occupational health and safety and taken it to a new level for the town of Spruce Grove. As a result of her work, our WCB rates have come down, but even above and beyond that, she's got us core certified. She put a ton of work into this. At the same time, she switched gears and implemented a rapid testing program for a mandatory vaccination program that we have with the city, and never hesitated. Anything we ask her to do, she does. She jumps right up and does it. She is just an awesome, phenomenal employee. Our WCB rates went down about $60,000 in 2021, and we're expecting them to go down to another $40,000 in 2022. This lady deserves the recognition. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kaylee, so much.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Town Council, thank you very much, Kaylee and Bass. And Bass, you're still the Deputy Chief. We haven't lost you yet. That's good. Good. And thank you again for stepping in. And Kaylee, thank you for all your work to have those incredible savings through workman's compensation. That's really good. Thank you. Delegations. We have no delegations tonight, and we don't have a consent agenda. So that brings us to item 6.1. Regular council meeting minutes for December 1st, 2021. Councillor Wegener.
I move that council adopt the December 1st, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. We have no tabled items tonight. That brings us to item 8, items or reports from administration. 8.1, Alberta Community Partnership Grant Application. Ethan, you're presenting on this. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Thank you. So CSMI, or the Cooperative Stormwater Management Initiative, is looking to apply for $185,000 of funding through the Alberta Community Partnership Program under the intermunicipal collaboration component. With CSMI composing of the town of Strathmore, Rocky View County, City of Calgary, and the WID, the requirements of the intermunicipal collaboration are met. $185,000 is intended to be used for Phase 2 of the Regional Stormwater Management Program, and the focus will be on low-impact development, or LID, practices. Phase 1 of this program has been successful and was also funded through an ACP grant back in 2019. The town would be the managing partner for this grant, with Rocky View being the supporting partner. Both councils are required to pass a motion to allow the application to proceed. I'm happy to advise that Rocky View Council unanimously supported this motion yesterday in their council meeting. CSMI is the stormwater solution for Northwest Strathmore, and although this program would be focused on CSMI and its partners, the findings could be applicable to the town as a whole, should that make sense at that time. With this, I would request council support on the application, but I'm happy to answer any questions before that decision.
Questions from council? Councillor Wiley.
Hi, good evening. What would taxpayers in Strathmore see for this $185,000? Like, is there any kind of visual thing they've seen from the Phase 1 and anything that they would see in the Phase 2?
Your Worship, through the chair, I would say regular citizens probably won't see anything. It's our developers who would see guidance documents that come out of this plan and this program. Phase 1 was focused on regional stormwater guidelines. It's also somewhat focused on best management practices, so Phase 2 is taking that into low-impact development. So ultimately, when all of this is done, there'll be new guidance documents that the town can use, all of our partners can use, and mostly it's our developers who see the benefit.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Were you finished? Your Worship, I would move that Council direct administration to submit a 2021-22 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application as the managing partner in support of the CSMI Regional Stormwater Management Project, Phase 2, LID research. And Your Worship, I'm just very much in favor of this motion. I think that Councillor Wiley brings up a really good point. Lots of times our community doesn't think about stormwater management. It's something that's left in the hands of very capable people in our development in the community, under the town's direction. But it is a critical factor, and I think that some of our community has been left in more difficult situations than others, and the way that that our CSMI water management has evolved over the last few years has been come under great scrutiny. So this research just adds another element to that, and it allows us to proceed, especially in terms of what we've seen with neighboring climate change and groundwater flooding. I think it's really timely, and I'm very, very glad that you've taken this on, and I know that your department has taken this on, and it's a lot of extra work. I'm really appreciative of it.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Ethan, of all the things I've had to learn in the last 11 years, stormwater management scares me the most. I find it incredibly confusing, but I also understand the great importance of it to the town and to our developers, so they have certainty, stability in what they have to do. And this is the groundwork, this is the behind-the-scenes stuff that's going to help us, and I appreciate you, your staff doing this, and you and your staff. Any other comments, councillors? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, when I went to go and press unmute, it went haywire. I vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ethan. And that brings us to item 8.2, the Lakewood Twin Arena proposal. Mark Pretzlaff, are you coming up first to speak? Good evening and welcome.
Yes, Your Worship, and thank you very much. I guess this report is co-authored by myself and Mr. Teedy. I can provide some of the context related to the report that's also included there, and Mr. Teedy can speak to some of the financials. In September 2020, representatives from Devmore Development met with administration to gather feedback for a proposed ice arena in the Lakewood Meadows community. Administration worked with them and consulted with our recreation master plan to identify priorities and recommendations for the delivery of recreation culture, active living, and community lifestyles. The recreation master plan that was supported and adopted by council in January 2020 supported, recommended, or I guess the feedback that was gathered from focus groups and community surveys identified an ice arena as a possible capital investment for the town. Based on that, and with the support of council, a non-binding letter of support was drafted for this project. Recently, just a couple weeks ago, administration and Mayor Fuel met with representatives from Heck Yeah to discuss a proposal for a twin arena that would be here, that we built in the Strathmore at the Lakewood community. If there's any questions regarding the report or the recreation master plan, I'll do my best to answer them. If there's any financials, Mr. TD can probably better than I can.
Thank you, Mark. Questions from councillors concerning Mark's presentation and what you've seen in the last little while? Anything at home, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you very much. So I just had a couple of questions. So first of all, like there's, maybe it's just my misunderstanding, but there's a couple of different figures in the report as far as like the tax increase. There's one figure that's, I think, around 18%, and then another one that says 20 to 25. Are those just kind of reflecting different circumstances?
They would reflect, it's a range that we've put in the report, and it would be dependent on a number of factors that would be ironed out over the course of the negotiation.
Okay.
It would be dependent very much on the particular deal that was struck, and we do not have all the details on that part.
Okay. And so, like, was there like any sort of, I don't want to say like actually formal assessment done, but was there an assessment done as far as like projecting like what we could possibly see as revenues if we were to sublease this? Is there any figures like that?
Through the chair, Councillor Montgomery, no, the Recreation Master Plan recommends that a needs assessment be conducted in order to gather that sort of information. To date, there hasn't been any, with the effects of COVID and things like that, a needs assessment has not been conducted.
Okay. Can you give me like a rough idea, like just like, let's say somehow if there was a miracle where like the arenas were rented out, almost all the time, like what we would see as monthly revenue, like best case scenario?
Through the chair, our current, I would say in this calendar, in this fiscal year, and obviously that is an anomaly because of COVID and things like that, our annual revenue is approximately $400,000 to $500,000 in terms of revenue for our twin arena. Expenses are close to $1 million, so there's again a deficit of about $600,000 based on this calendar / fiscal year.
Okay. Now, I was sent an email by the representative from Heck Yeah, and they mentioned something about grants that might be available. Did you guys hear about those grants that would apparently like something to do with like helping cover maybe like lease costs? Just maybe, I'm not sure what they would cover exactly, but there's maybe grants to help with cover the construction or something like that. Did you guys hear about those?
Through the chair, the only grant program that I'm aware of is a federal infrastructure Canada grant or a program, but we have not done any research into examining whether this purchase or this build would be qualified for that.
Okay. Now, and I guess just so the public is kind of aware, one of the terms of this proposed project would be that the town lease this arena from the builders, let's call it, or the owners for $130,000 per month. Is that like a set rate, or is it supposed to kind of be adjusted to reflect inflation over time?
Through the chair, I can only speak to what was in the proposal, and that's what was outlined there.
Okay, because yeah, like 130 today is pretty steep, but maybe in 40 years that'll be not much. Okay. Okay, and so I guess administration, you're just recommending that we just kind of cut this off right now. Don't look into it any further, I take it.
Through the chair, that's our recommendation based on some of the financials involved. Not knowing what the community can support without a needs assessment at this time, we feel it's just too early for us to prepare and to enter into any such agreement.
Okay. And one final question is, so it's mentioned that this will impact our debt level. Is there? I just want to be kind of, I guess, clear. So there's no other options as far as like this will certainly impact our debt level. There's no way to get around that. And I just want this to be clear, just so that if somebody asks or points anything out, so there's no way for us to not have this reflected on our debt level.
That's correct. A lease is considered a form of financing, and we do not have a way around that.
Okay. Okay. And this would obviously, I believe the report said, pretty much put us double over our own self-imposed limit, but it would also put us over the provincial debt limit as well.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. I thought it might be helpful, just in the context of this conversation, to have Mr. Teedy maybe explain, in the funding model they propose, they talk about an LLC, or a limited liability corporation, I believe. And when I look at this, I understand that it's not a possibility today. But if this developer, this development group, did set up an LLC to own, build, and perhaps lease themselves, you never know what philanthropists might come forward with $20 million, and that very well could be. Or we could take a long perspective around this and say this is a 15-year project, and 10 to 15 years out, when Strathmore's population will hopefully be in that 19 to 20,000 population range, that would be an ideal space. But I think it would be helpful for people to understand what a limited liability corporation is.
Well, in the context of this agreement, the preferred way from the town point of view perhaps could be that the developer build the building and fund it themselves, and then pass it on to the town as a contributed asset, and the town operate it at some point in time, if that was council's desire. But from a financial perspective, as where we're at currently, if we sign a lease, we're all in terms of the debt perspective, and it's impossible to do that with the financing that has been proposed.
Any other comments from councillors? You know, I'm obviously, I'm disappointed. I would have loved to have pursued this. I think a lot of us know in the community that ice times are at a premium and they've had to cap some registrations. But when you see the numbers in front of us, it would very much tie our hands as far as if a major project had to be done or a major repair had to be done. It would put us in a very bad financial situation, and exceeding the provincial debt limit would not be good either. We can't do that anyway. But I'm disappointed. I was very, very impressed, and I was really excited by the meeting, and I really thank you, Scott, for coming forward, and you guys thought outside the box, and you tried to come up with a way that it could be beneficial to both parties. But our financial situation right now, it would be a really almost impossible thing for us to do. So, any other comments? Nothing from administration?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we should just bring the motion forward.
Thank you. You're right. Could we have a motion to get a motion on the floor for any further discussion? Yes, Scott. Yeah, I think I'd like to have you come up. I think the public would appreciate it too if we hear from the party that came forward with the concept.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, Administration, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Scott Due Diligence Silva. Yes, that middle name is correct. I am big on due diligence, and I think that's the word of the day for today. I'm here as a representative as Heck Yeah. So to give you some background, Heck Yeah was founded here in Strathmore last year in 2020. It is an event and public relations platform to bring awareness for charities and nonprofits alike. We do a lot with the town and also with Wheatland County. Most recently, a youth employment program with FCSS, Community Futures, SAIL, Prospect Now, to employment.ca, and in fact, the town of Strathmore. This is to foster healthy minds of our youth for today so they can be employees, leaders, and entrepreneurs for tomorrow. Special advisor to the Strathmore Overnight Shelter, and also sometimes known as material handler and procurement officer for baked goods. Yes, that means I deliver bread. I'm also one of the board of directors for the Wheatland Crisis Society. I sit on the second stage housing, or actually I'm the chair and co-chair for the second stage housing and transitional committee. Next year, we are hoping to be able to put something forward so we can work towards that as well. And finally, I'm your executive director for the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce. But what does all this mean? Nothing. Sweet UFA, except for one thing. I get things done. And I'm here today because I am that conduit that can do it. So in the end, I'm here as the introductory representative, and simply introductory representative to this opportunity, where a private development group, which is funded through a Canadian pension fund that has a focus on community and recreational facilities development, has asked me to be that introductory representative. So why we are here today, I think is very important. As mentioned, there was a letter of support that was provided back in January 6th of 2021. I believe we've read through it. It was a letter from the Office of the Mayor, as mentioned before, non-binding, but in support of the development. But it was, in fact, this letter that has spurred us to where we are today. If this land use wasn't designated or wasn't approved, I would not need to be standing here. There would not be a group that's interested in developing a $30 million facility here in the town of Strathmore. Further to that, I've asked administration their strategy to achieve this, and currently there isn't one. So I read the master plan. On page 45 of 256 in your agenda today, it states recommendation number 1, continue to develop new partnerships and enhance existing partnerships in the provision of recreation and culture services. It clearly defines that it is certainly with its limited resources, particularly financial, the town of Strathmore is only able to provide recreation and culture services to a certain degree. The need for others to be involved in the delivery system is paramount. Partnerships can also bring benefits around financial, as partners often have different knowledge, expertise, and access to volunteers that can prove instrumental in the effective delivery of services. This is why we're here today, to start these talks and this creative strategy. There was no lease agreement that was provided. No terms were defined, and it was clearly stated that those terms need to be discovered. This is simply just a due diligence period. In saying that, this opportunity, as I mentioned, with the private development group, as funded through this Canadian Pension Fund, has a focus for community and recreational developments. And they want to offer this opportunity for partnership with the town. That is what's key. This is a partnership. And this partnership right now is proposed as a head lease operator. The head lease operator can be redefined. That also does include part of the cost sharing. I have already reached out to the county to start these discussions because I think it's important that everybody is involved and engaged. But that's why we're here today, is to investigate further that due diligence. So how can we do this? Don't just ask me the questions today because, as I mentioned, I am the conduit. I don't have all of the answers. But ask your residents. Ask your sports groups that are here today as well. Ask your administration, because when I see the recommendation from administration that talks about town council to direct or council direct administration decline the Lakewood of Strathmore's proposal, this is not Lakewood of Strathmore's proposal. This is Strathmore Arena's proposal from the developer or from that private development group. And this is not regarding a lease agreement. There's no lease agreement in place. This is simply due diligence. So as we talk through this, I guess really what we look at for next steps is the ask. It's the due diligence towards your strat plan. It's the due diligence towards your constituents, as some of you have actually talked about recreation facilities in your campaigns. It's about due diligence for your sports teams, but really to understand the full potential of this facility. This means multiple revenue streams, utilizing every single aspect for advertising and marketing purposes. Growth strategy, due diligence within your growth strategy. How can we reach these milestones? Also, investment attraction and regional impacts. This is huge to have something of this level come to our town. We are continually losing players and families to other cities, let alone opportunities for bigger and larger franchises. I do all this because I ask you for the due diligence, because it's not just to listen to the responses, but to actually hear them, to take them all in. Because this is a conversation that I do not need to lead. I am the volunteer here, the conduit bringing this together. It's a conversation better led by administration and council, but at the same time with the partnerships of this private development group. That being said, I will leave it open to any questions that anyone might have for me.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? Councillor Mitzner?
Hi. I'm open to the opportunity that you're providing, but there are no options right now for additional debt. We're supporting the citizens by trying to keep our debt service down. If there's an opportunity for you to get additional partners, if your numbers change, if you get it cash flowing, whatever, I mean, you can always come back with a better proposal. It's just the way it is right now, it's not good for the town of Strathmore's debt. Thank you.
And one of the things we face is we have to look at what kind of a dollar and cents impact it would have on the town. So, I agree that, that you're not necessarily presenting a lease agreement for us to approve, but, there have been numbers presented, and we know based on listening to our finance people and our facilities director that those kind of figures couldn't be afforded by the town at this time. So I'm not sure if we accept this as information and then you folks come back again after you. But as far as soliciting the public, we would have to know what kind of potential property tax increase it might be for the town residents, so that they could make an informed decision. We would even have to, if we want to go to the public, it might even have to go to a plebiscite. But then again, you still need to have some figures to show what impact it might have on the residents' property taxes. So that's the situation we're in. It's the proposal is an interesting one, and I did run on one of my campaign platform pieces was to try to make steps towards a twin arena. I would love that, but we do unfortunately have to look at the dollar value that could be attached to it, and the annual fees that we may have to pay as a municipality. Scott?
And thank you, Councillor Mitzner and Your Worship. I can definitely appreciate those facts. I think one thing that needs to be explored further and that we've already started to work with Community Futures on is looking at grants that actually exceed just the ones that were mentioned today. There's a lot of grants available to not only nonprofits, but as you note or may note on the package, it actually talks about building a community and a foundation to oversee this project. That then becomes your nonprofit entity that can actually use as a vehicle to attract further funding and also to offset any of that debt load. This is just some of the creative strategy, though, that can be looked at. And that's why I'm simply asking for further due diligence. That if we can see that there's absolutely no way that this will work, then yes, this development group will move on and look at another opportunity. But I bring this up because there's a lot of different options with revenue streams. The additional tax base that'll be going up around that project is nearly $10 million. This was a question asked by the county, not by the town, which caught my attention because this is a tax base that would cause or that would bring a lot of revenue. This community and another project that I work on in the community or in the county also is another large tax base. That's what I'm trying to do is my best to bring up these tax bases, which obviously offsets any income or expense. In saying that, there's the cost-sharing models, there's all the jobs that are created, but all of this is part of discussion, I think, that is found through understanding and that due diligence. That is why I wanted to come up to speak. I wanted to make sure that there was a clear understanding of what was to be had or the outcome for today, and it was simply to strategize further due diligence.
If I can understand some of the things you were saying at the start, it almost sounds like the community needs a society, needs to almost create a society to start the process as far as looking for grants, looking for different funding partners. But as far as the town and the potential payments we would have to make right now, based on the figures that were thrown, it would be almost impossible. But I guess I'm confused because we need to accept this as information. We can't really. There's no real lease agreement that's been presented because you're saying that there could be all sorts of other revenue streams and different approaches, different partners. So it seems almost like we've taken a step back and we're going too far, and this is earlier in the process than we really thought. So maybe that's part of it. Councillor Peterson.
I was going to bring up the same thing about the community involvement, Your Worship. I think that is a critical thing. But in terms of due diligence, between 2013 and my advent into the area of council and the creation of the Recreation Master Plan, on at least 3 occasions, the recreation program at that time wasn't under Mark Pretzloff, but it was under our recreation director, undertook to do studies in terms of the community satisfaction surveys. And one of the things that some of those information-seeking due diligence processes undertook was to ask people, what are you prepared to pay? What are you prepared to sacrifice? And so in the course of that, I think one of the things that we came to an understanding was, and this was pre-COVID, that people were willing to put money into it, but nothing like the dollars that we're talking about. But if you came before this council, because our due diligence is to make sure that we don't put our citizens and our community in an untenable situation. That's our due diligence. And so, respecting that, we went to our community to ask them those questions, and we heard 2 things. They desperately want more ice surface, and they clearly understand that it costs money more than what we have now. Recreation in our community takes up, I believe it's approximately 25% of our total budget. So that's pretty extraordinary in a town of 14,500 or 13,500 people. And so we've done our due diligence, and I think we've done it extremely well, and it hasn't ended. And so we understand in that process that our community is willing to pay something. One of the things that we looked at was adding an ice surface to our existing recreation center, adding a 3rd ice surface. And that would put us, in those statistics where we look at other communities, it would actually put us well beyond that. If this process, if this Strathmore Arena group wanted to engage in that, I think that's a much more short-term, very doable process that we could look at. I think it's very, very doable, in the next 5 to 6 years. But the multiple reserve streams that that you have noted are not nailed down. And it's way too much risk for us to ask our citizens to undertake that at this point. But that doesn't mean that the conversation shouldn't continue and shouldn't continue in the fulsomeness of the report that you've brought to us. And I appreciate the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I believe we're basically on the same page. I think this needs to extend further into due diligence. Two things you mentioned there about a third sheet of ice. This design is meant to be staged. So it can be done in one portion, allowing for a performance arena, which has over 1,000 seats, and then a secondary portion. Looking at the current ice setup, we do not have the ability to add a performance arena, from my understanding. I might be mistaken, but this is something I've also asked the town if we can look at their revenue models, because maybe there's something that I'm missing or I'm not understanding, because there is other revenue models, as you mentioned, for marketing, advertising purposes, but they do need to be nailed down. And because we haven't finished the design or anything of the building, we don't know yet. But there are other examples to look at. And so we're currently cultivating those from Okotoks, from one of the other arenas that was meant to be, that was potentially to be built out here. One of the things I do want to mention, though, is that this debt piece is a very rare debt piece because it's coming from a pension fund. It has a 40-year amortization on it and a fixed rate for that 40-year period, which means you're going to have a debt piece attached to the arena that is fixed and guaranteed for the entire life of the arena. Within the head lease operator, there is proposed no landlord requirements. That means any maintenance, anything at all on the facility is done through the development group. The idea is meant to be a carefree lease. But again, this is just that initial discussion. These discussions could take 6 months. They could take another year. But all we're looking for is to make sure that at least we're going down that path, because this opportunity might pass us by. And it's been nearly 12 months in the making of trying to put all this together with the group, with the funding, with everything else. And we're just at this precipice now where we need to understand if it's moving in the right direction. And that simply is where I feel some further due diligence, strategizing, talking with the community, setting up this foundation. That's one of their comments. They specifically said, why don't we set up a committee and a foundation made up of the county, the town, and sports organizations, and start to work in that direction. And I really appreciate your thoughts on that too.
And I appreciate that too. And there's one thing I know about pension funds, having been at that table, is that they don't take risk and that they don't give money away. And so I think that if they're coming into this, there's a whole other piece of that pie. And when I look at number 2 and the especially as I spoke about earlier on that limited liability corporation, you know, that's how they roll. And that doesn't put the risk in their side, it puts it on ours. And right at this point, that's not acceptable to this community.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I think that there's a better strategy for that, a much better strategy. And again, this is just the surface. This is just their preliminary introduction to this, which is why when a lease agreement was requested, they responded with, there's nothing to provide. There's just discussion now at this point.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate the work, and I understand from what you've just said, this is step 1, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I have Deputy Mayor Montgomery and then Councillor Wiley.
Thank you very much. So I'm always interested in kind of, I guess, taking a close look at things and doing due diligence and making sure that we know all the facts. So I noticed in this report that administration mentioned something about a needs assessment costing $40,000. Beyond just kind of assessing if there is kind of a need for this, is there going to be a cost on top of that $40,000 to perform the due diligence that Mr. Silva is talking about? Kind of hammering out all the numbers. What I'm wondering is if maybe this development group is interested in carrying or covering some of the cost that would have to be incurred to look into this further. I'm reluctant to kind of spend much more than a small amount of money to look into this. So I'd be curious to know if there was any interest in investing in the assessment part.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. I will take note of that, and I'll take that back to the team. and look to provide an update on that as well. And again, this is part of what I think is the strategy, is to have these discussions and these questions. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
So I guess question, I guess. So at this point, this group is looking for a letter of let's say a letter of intent without any sort of unbinding. So it's unbinding on us. What does administration, I guess, need to look into this further? Is it enough to just is there anything beyond the letter that we need to do at this point, or are we just giving a letter saying that we're willing to look at this? Yeah, so I guess my question is there a motion that needs to be made right now to actually get administration to do anything if we were to want to look into this further?
Thank you. Mr. Legore?
To you, Mr. Mayor, the town is always willing to look at proposals. With all due respect, we got this proposal presented to us on December 2nd and asked to have it to council as quick as we could, which was December 15th, which gave us less than a week to do any due diligence on it. My recommendation is that you pass the motion that we have before you. They can come back with another proposal at any time. There's nothing preventing that. The first thing that, as Mark has rightfully said, the first thing the town needs to do is a needs assessment. And that'll determine what your actual needs are. We probably need a third sheet of ice, yes. Now, the town can borrow money at a fixed rate for 40 years as well, and we may be able to borrow it cheaper than even the private sector can. In fact, I could almost guarantee you that we could. So you need to look at the total package to see whether it works for the town or not. And if the developer wants to come back with another proposal, then that's fine. Let heck yeah, come back with another proposal to the town. We'll take a look at it. And if we can, give us more time to do some more due diligence on it. The current proposal, the $130,000 a month lease, is about a 12% tax increase. That's unaffordable without the operating costs.
Thank you. Councillor Mitzner.
Your Worship, if I could.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion ready if that's all right, or I could wait until Councillor Mitzner has spoken.
Well, I guess we should put a motion on the floor just so we can discuss. So you're ready?
Thank you. I would just like to make a motion that we accept this report for information.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor, Councillor Mitzner, discussion, and then Councillor Wiley.
I just have a quick question. Your proposal is not arena specific, it's site specific. Is that correct?
Just for purposes, this is a discussion paper, so not a formal proposal, but it is specific to the arena and the development of the arena.
On a specific site?
The site that was designated by the town, yes, the land use designation, correct.
Thank you.
And it's because right now that land use designation was completed at the beginning of this year, and that's where the discussions have evolved from.
Thank you.
If there was another site, then yes, definitely, that's an option, without question.
Councillor Wiley.
For anyone watching at home or here, I think we're all very disappointed. It's too bad this isn't going to work out. I think if you're guessing from the conversation we're having. There is a proposal in here, if anyone's following at home. It's page 22 of the 256-page package. And it does say in here that town would be taking on a monthly lease that's anticipated $130,000 a year. That works out to $1.5 million annually. Sorry, $130,000 a month, which is $1.5 million annually. Our current arena runs us a deficit of $800,000 a year. So a second arena would have an even greater loss. It's just not financially possible with the proposal that's in front of us. And so I can't support the proposal that's here.
Scott?
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. I would beg the question or warrant the question, where is our current revenue status at for the current facility? What are we doing in those advertising and marketing dollars? And I say that respectfully because I have a bit of a background in advertising and marketing, specifically even around arenas. And I've seen the revenue that can come out of that. One question I've asked is, how are these models calculated? I haven't seen that either. I'm trying to understand it so I can help connect the dots. Immediately from your understanding, you are correct. There was an anticipated cost of $130,000 for a $30 million build-out facility. That facility, though, can be done in stages, number one. Doesn't have to be built out at all and complete. But number two, it actually addresses a lot of the concerns that were also brought up in the master plan with event facilities. So it does have a concert seating option in there. It has dry land training, different event rooms. So there are other revenue potential, let alone naming rights, subleases, and even the possibility of bringing in a larger franchise or having the current franchise, which is actually what's under discussion, to see if there's a room for graduation to their next conference. That being said, I can understand where everyone is at, and I think as this is a motion for information, all that is being looked at is to figure out what a proposal looks like, understand what the next steps could look like, and if it doesn't work, then that's fine. No other time needs to be had on that.
Thank you. And I think, we're not totally closing the door on a twin arena concept. What we're saying is that the funding model that's been presented is something that's just too unwieldy and unmanageable for the town to do. So if we accept this as information, then you folks, our administration, can start to look at other things that we can start to come up with a plan to go forward. I think we all agree that more ice is needed. And maybe it also involves that needs assessment. But it may also be time for residents in our community and the sports groups to really motivate or get activated is the word I was looking for, get activated as far as creating a society so that we can look at potential grants that are out there. But I like the motion on the floor that Deputy Mayor presented because it doesn't necessarily close the door, but it gives us a chance to reconnect, to take a step back and look at what we can do to move things forward or to move the concept forward. Councillor Wiley.
My question's for administration. Is there an advantage? So administration recommended that we decline the proposal, and Deputy Mayor Montgomery has asked us to just accept it as information. Is there an advantage to us declining over accepting it as information?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, both motions really say the same thing. If they want to come back with something, the door is open. They can always come back with something. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Deputy Mayor, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And at home?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. And the motion is carried. So we look forward to hearing from you again. It's just a regrouping, I think, and our administration is waiting to hear back from you. Thank you.
Thank you, administration, council, your worship, everybody. Appreciate it very much. Have a good night.
And that brings us to item 8.3, which is on page 173, and it is a discussion concerning potential city status for Strathmore. Mr. Teedy, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council considered this question somewhat in the past. The report outlines advantages and potential costs of city status, and I'm here to answer any questions contained from the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Teedy? I have one. I was looking at the idea that Highway 817 would become our responsibility as far as maintenance on page 174. Do we have any idea of what state 817 could be turned into us? And by that, I mean, maybe Jamie, this is for you. Can you ever make a request of the province to turn over, if we were granted city status, can we ever request that they bring it up to a certain standard before we take ownership of it?
Through the chair, we certainly could ask. In my experience, the province isn't often that receptive to the ask, but we could certainly ask the question.
Thank you. Do we know the state of the highway? I think you mentioned it in here that it looks. I mean, at this time, we're uncertain as far as the road condition. I know that the wetlands near the golf course, you talk about it, that it borders a body of water. We don't know the full extent of the condition of the road at this point.
Through the chair, not the full condition. Anecdotally, it has presented some challenges just in us trying to keep it maintained. But no, there hasn't been any kind of fulsome study on what the state of that highway is.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Peterson?
It's not really a question to Mel, but just a question to you. Is Okotoks still has town status, correct?
As far as I know, they've decided to stay at town status. They haven't pursued city status.
I'd be really interested in hearing at some point, Your Worship, from Okotoks and Cochrane about why they've chosen to maintain their town status. I'd really be interested, because I know that Okotoks particularly did some work on that. I remember having a conversation with Bill Robertson some time ago, Mayor Robertson, and I recall a few of his ideas around why they stayed.
There was almost a preference to stay at town status at Okotoks, but I can contact the newly elected Mayor Thorne there, and I can also reach out to Jeff Shenung at Cochrane.
And I think that they had done some really good financial planning, rollout financial planning around it as well. And they do have some similarities, both being on major roads like we are. They have some advantages that we don't have necessarily. But I'd be really interested in looking at it further, because I know that Cochrane's been on the cusp, right? They're really seriously considering going to city status. And I think it would just be worthwhile to just gather the information, Your Worship.
Yeah, and the other thing I've learned over the last 11 years again is how closely we are, how close a comparison we are to High River. Yeah. And so it might be good for me to reach out to your former guy, Mayor Snodgrass, and we can see if they've kicked this around. And I don't know, have you heard anything in the last couple of years at High River? No? No real push for it?
No, it's not something that they were looking at this time.
Thank you. So that's another mayor I can reach out to and just see. Are there any other questions for Mel as far as the report that was presented? Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, so when I read the report, I couldn't see any advantages to switching to city status. I'm just wondering, Mel, am I missing anything? Like, did you pick up any positives?
You know, the only positive would be one that is put forward by the economic development type people, that it would raise the awareness of the city or potential city, but I would counter that would be very short-lived, and I think there's more disadvantages financially than moving in that direction at this time.
Yeah, that's what I got from the report as well. Thank you.
And I wanted to thank you folks for putting together the report, but also that article on city status in Alberta. That was really a good piece of information to read about. I liked how they listed the pros and cons so that you could easily see what you might be facing as far as this. But I have no problem reaching out to a few mayors and seeing how they feel, how they are in their planning concerning city status. Is there a councillor prepared to put a motion on the floor? And we can discuss further once the motion is there. I guess like Jonathan, you were saying we don't necessarily have to put a motion on the floor to accept his information because that's a bit redundant.
That's correct, Your Worship. We don't need a motion to accept
Okay,
his
are there
information.
any more discussion points or questions for Mel then? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Teedy.
Thank you.
And that brings us to 8.4, cancellation of the January 5th, 2021 regular council meeting Councillor Peterson.
Your worship, I move that council cancel the regular council meeting on January 5th, 2022, and that council direct administration to schedule a committee of the whole meeting for January 26th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you for the motion. You've all heard the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. That brings us to 8.5, Community Future Wild Rose Request for Support, page 185. And I believe, Kristen, you're speaking to this. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Community Future Wild Rose wishes to execute a regional initiative to facilitate and lead the digital economy program within the Community Futures Wild Rose region. The program will help businesses increase their digital presence and capacity to address the economic challenges created by COVID-19. Community Futures is seeking an additional small cash support of $1,950 for the digital economy program to run in 2022. This additional funding will support the administration of the program. Funds that are existing are coming from the 2021 Economic Development Budget. The bulk of this funding is successful with $260,000 in cash and in kind from Western Economic Diversification Canada with Community Futures. This is a small investment on our part to have a meaningful impact by increasing our small businesses with a digital footprint into a global economy. The more support layers we add on to our recovery, the stronger and more resilient we will be. I welcome any questions from council.
Thank you, Kristen. Are there any questions first? And then we can put a motion on the floor for discussion. Councillor Peterson?
Kristen, I don't know if you can answer the question or not, but I read about this initiative with tremendous interest. And my interest is within that economic process, but also speaks to what's happened in this COVID environment and what we've learned about marginalization of certain populations in terms of digitization and technology in general, and how marginalized populations are even more distanced from the process. And I'm wondering if you know if any of this, through the Canadian Western Diversification Program, if any of this funding will take into consideration that idea of social inclusion as it impacts economic development into the future. And when I talk about marginalized, I see our area as part of that, not just because we have extensive rural connections that lend itself to that, but also through our partnership with Siksika, all kinds of things that relate to being disadvantaged in terms of economy if you're in rural Alberta today. And so wondering about that social inclusion piece, I don't need an answer tonight, but I'd be really interested if that forms a part of their context.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. I don't have that exact information, you're correct. I know when we talk about broadband as well as inclusion, but social connectivity versus the digital connectivity. So I don't have the information right now, but I can follow up with you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kristen? Deputy Mayor Montgomery?
Just a motion whenever you're ready.
I think we're ready now.
All right. I will move the council support the Community Futures Wild Rose Digital Economy Program in the amount of $1,950 with funds to come from the existing economic development budget. And if I could just say,
you bet.
Thank you. I'm the representative for the Community Futures, and so I've gotten to kind of work with these people a little bit, and I can attest to the fact that any money that we put towards Community Futures is multiplied many times throughout the community, and the return on investment through Community Futures is quite substantial. And I'll also give a plug right now that if you are thinking about starting a business or you have a business, Community Futures looks at loaning to people that are considered higher risk than normal, or businesses that are higher risk than normal that other lenders might not look at. So I encourage everybody to contact them if you are doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion points on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you to you and the comms team for all the things that have been going on, the events that have been taking place around the town. The downtown Christmas event was really good too, and just so impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Proud to serve.
Thank you.
And that brings us to committee reports. Item 9.1.
8.6, yeah.
8.6, sorry, Handy Bus Association Board appointment. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. I would move that Council appoint Your Worship to the Handy Bus Association for a year term ending October 31st, 2022, providing you'd be prepared to serve.
I would be prepared. I just want to check with Deputy Mayor Montgomery. And Deputy Mayor, you and I were both at the AGM in late November. It was a confusing time period, as you recall. And my question is, do you remember how many are on the board at this time? They had a lot of nominations that afternoon.
I believe that there is 11 currently. So, and the new bylaws are proposed to have 13, room for 13.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure there should be room for a rep from the town, and then probably a rep from the county as well, I would expect.
Okay. And right now you were elected. You were nominated, and you got a position on the board as a public member. So I would just be joining that group as a potential appointed member. And I believe the first new board meeting is tomorrow, and you folks will be deciding about appointed members and bylaws and things like that as well. I know the bylaws still have to come back to another AGM or another general meeting.
Yeah, I presume that there's probably going to be a bylaw committee that's kind of working on the bylaws. So I don't think we'll be doing, and I can send you the agenda. But yeah, it's kind of just other stuff.
Yeah, I guess my point is I might be chosen as the council representative. You're already there as a public representative, but it still comes down to the board as to what they're going to do about the appointed members and the number of appointed members. But I believe they're signing the MOU tomorrow potentially, correct?
Yeah, that's going to be reviewed tomorrow, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Legore?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. What we're being told is the MOU will be approved tomorrow, and we're entitled to appoint a voting member. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is there further discussion on the motion on the floor? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Can you vote for yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, I did that already. You guys all voted. Yeah, it's the end of the night too. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to committee reports. 9.1, Wheatland Housing Management Body Building Committee Meeting, Building Committee Minutes, November 29th, page 190. Is there any, I guess we're looking for a motion on the floor that in case anybody wants to discuss the building committee meeting minutes. Councillor Wegener.
I move that council accept the November 29th, 2021 Wheatland Housing Management Body Building Committee minutes as information.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wegener. And is there any further discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And Deputy Mayor?
Aye.
Okay, and that motion is carried. Items directly related to council, item number 10, there's nothing there. Item 11, bylaws. 11.1, 2021 fees bylaw number 21-30. Lisa, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship Council. Administration is asking Council to approve the 2021 fees bylaw 21-30, which will come into effect on January 1st, 2022. Does Council have any questions with any of the proposed changes?
Thank you. That's a good point. We'll start with questions first. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Montgomery, do you have some questions for Lisa?
I do have a couple questions. Thank you very much. So one of the changes that was proposed just has to do with I'm assuming it's a security deposit for when there's a development permit required. So there was, and sorry, this is page 204 that I'm referring to, just for your. So on this table where it talks about the development permit securities, it says security required, single detached, semi-detached, or duplex dwelling for a first-time applicant, $1,000 per building. And then right below that, it says kind of similar, but it doesn't mention for the first-time applicant. And so is the first-time applicant, they're going to be paying the $1,000 plus the 5,000, or can you just clarify, I guess?
Sure, through the chair. The intent of this is that a new builder or developer would be charged a higher amount than a developer who's done work in the town and has done good work and has not damaged any public facilities. So it's a two-tiered security.
Okay, but so they would be paying the 1,000 plus the 5,000 that's right below that then, for example?
Through the chair, I believe it's 5,000 and then it's 10,000 per year if you do multiple applications.
Right, I get that. So, and that's for somebody who's just a regular builder. They're paying that 5,000 or 10,000 per year. And then so you're saying if you're a new builder, then on top of that 5,000, you would pay the 1,000 as well.
No, it's an or, right? So if it's just a single attached structure, it's 1,000, and then if you do multiple structures, it would be a different fee.
Okay. 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 And I didn't see it indicated, maybe I missed it. How long is the security held for?
Through the chair, typically we would be held in up to a calendar year, but if for some reason if structure was completed and there was an inspection completed, we could return it sooner than that.
Okay. Okay, and as far as like damage to like town infrastructure, that would be something that you would be looking for kind of more immediately. Like it's not like you're looking for damage that, if it looks fine, you know, when they're done the job, you know, are you expecting something 3 months later to kind of show up? Is that part of the reason why we're holding the security for that long?
Yes, through the chair. Typically, depending on the infrastructure, there's two stages. There's a CCC stage, and then there's an FAC stage, and depending on the infrastructure, those timelines might be different. But we are focusing on sidewalks is the one issue we've been having more recently.
Okay. Now, on page, oh, sorry, and if somebody else has a question, I just have 3 more questions, but if somebody else wants to jump in, they can.
I'll check with the others. Any other questions? You're back, Deputy Mayor. It's up to you.
Thank you. So on page 208, and this is me being kind of pedantic, I guess. On page 208, it talks about water meter rental cost. So it mentions like $6 per day, and then it says $30 or $35 per week, which is about $5 per day. But then it says 160 per month, which, you know, then puts it at about I think it's about $5.33 per day. Is that intentional that the per month cost is higher per day than the per week cost? Or should that be lower than the per week cost?
I'm just looking at the 160 a month, and if you divide that by the 30 days or the 31 days, it comes to $5.33 for a 30-day month.
Yeah. But if you charge the per week cost, then that's $5 per day, right? Because it's 35 divided by 7.
Right.
So I'm just like,
So you're wondering why is it higher if you book it for a month? Your price is higher than if you book it for a week.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Does that help Jamie or Mel or Lisa?
Through the chair, we don't have an answer for that right now. We can take it away and bring it back if it's an important question for council.
I mean, I guess maybe we should, if administration is amenable, like we just amend it to have, either have the per month cheaper than the per week, or just even switch those out. I'm not sure, but that's just something I was kind of wondering about. And then the deposit for a water meter, it says it's like $21.82. Is that how much a water meter costs? Is like almost $2,200?
No, that is not the cost of a water meter.
Okay. Like a water meter is more than that?
A water meter is dependent on the size of the meter. So for a meter to be in that area, it would be a larger meter, not a residential size type meter.
Okay. And here's my final question. And I guess I'm besides the fact that we rely on this for revenue. What is the logic behind charging a homeowner more for sewer depending on the size of the water line? So like if you have a 5/8 water line, for instance, versus a 3/4 water line, we're charging more to people for sewer rates. But if you think about it, most sewer lines going into the sewer are probably going to be either 3.5 or 3-inch or 4-inch. So it's the sewer service for most residents is not contingent on the size of the water line coming in. So is there a logic behind charging more for people that have a bigger water line for sewer?
The size of the meter overall globally for the town, the idea is to proportion the output of water correspondingly on the flat rate. Depending on what size of meter determines what the cost of the meter is, because they're purchasing part of the overall volume from the town. And so the monthly cost for sewer is based on the operations of the sewer overall cost to the town, and not dependent on the size of the meter. There isn't a correlation there. The only cost on the meter, the bigger the meter or the bigger the pipe, the higher the flat charge is on the water side, not on the sewer side.
Okay, isn't there like a monthly maintenance cost that is paid for sewer? I think it was called, and that varies by some amount.
There is a flat charge, and it is dependent on the size of the meter also.
Okay. And so we're saying that we're charging more for the sewer for that cost, that flat cost, because and sorry, you said it is correlated to the size of the water line they have coming in, or it's not correlated, that monthly sewer cost? because it says like a 5/8, it says size of meter, and this is and this is under sewer rates. It says 5/8 is $28.84, and then it says a 3/4 inch is $50.04. And so like when somebody flushes the toilet, for instance, you know, it let's say puts out 4 liters of water, and it doesn't matter if you have a 3/4 inch line or a 1/2 inch or a 5/8 line coming in, you still flush the same amount. I believe we have a rule that says that you have to have like a low flow shower head, for instance. So again, that's not really contingent on the size of the meter, the amount of water going from your bathtub, for instance. So I guess like I'm and like I said, I kind of understand that, you know, we rely on this for revenue. You know, if we get rid of that difference, then that's gonna, you know, lower our revenue. Is there a logic beyond just us needing revenue though?
The size of the meter determines the flat monthly charge on both on the water and on the sewer side. I was incorrect in what I said earlier.
Okay, but I mean, I guess the point is though is that regardless of the size, whether it's 1/2 or it's 5/8 or 3/4, the amount that they're outputting to the sewer is, there's probably not a difference, is there?
It depends on, of course, on the type of an application of the water facility that they're using. The principle is the larger the infrastructure, the greater the cost to the town, generally.
I totally get that for the water line side. I can understand that. But for the sewer side, I don't see how there's a difference to the town, whether somebody, because like I said, if somebody flushes the toilet, that's not contingent on the size of the water line. That's putting out, you know, 4 liters or 6 liters, depending on the flush. Regardless of the size of the water line, when somebody fills and empties their bathtub, that's, you know, it's coming usually from the bathtub goes into an 1.5 inch pipe, which goes into a 3-inch pipe, which goes into the sewer and under the road, which is the same for any size of water line coming in. And again, like even with faucets are usually kind of limited on a liter per minute basis. So I just like, I like when, you know, when there's kind of, I guess, you know, when there's a logic to something, and I was having trouble figuring out what the logic was for this.
So residential has 2 sizes, 5/8 and 3/4. Those are the only 2 sizes that we offer for residential. The balance of the sizes beyond that, 1 inch and so on, up to 4 inch, that's all non-residential or all commercial type of properties. And so it's based on their use. If they want a smaller meter, they're welcome to have a smaller meter and a smaller monthly charge, both on the water and on the sewer side.
Yeah, I totally get that. If they want less water coming into the house.
If I can jump in, I think a lot of this, at least what I've learned again over the time, is a lot of this has to do, we've had to come up with a way to price as far as our wastewater treatment plant as well. Hasn't that been part of this whole situation as far as water coming in, water going out, charging for that? So if you have a larger water meter, you're going to pay that extra bit of money coming into your home. And a lot of it is just to pay for the treatment plant. I don't know if that helps, Deputy Mayor, but.
Your Worship, I think that there's also something that happened in this community that can be addressed exactly by what Director Teedy mentioned in terms of metering. But in the 80s, when the downtown was developing and a lot of the larger infrastructure pieces were being built, they overbuilt on the lines, and that has added cost. And people have mitigated it through exactly what you've described. But I think that from a perspective of an entire community, we were looking at making sure that we had a cost recovery program.
Okay. Yeah, like I don't want to, I guess, I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I guess, yeah, if I could, yeah, my point is though, is that there's a 3-inch line leaving a house. It doesn't matter if you have a 5/8 line or a 3/4 inch line coming in. They both have the same capacity going out. And so that's why I'm saying it doesn't make sense, because the output is, is the same. So it doesn't make sense to have a different charge for your sewer going out, depending on the size of the water line coming in. Maybe if we changed it so that that flat rate was actually somehow divided by people's use, so that, you know, like people that used more water paid a higher sewer charge. But I'll leave it for now. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I would move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-30, being the 2021 fees bylaw.
Thank you. So we have a motion for first reading. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Mark?
Thank you, Worship. I just want to advise council that Recreation and Culture will be looking to amend this bylaw later on in the year. For many of our user fees and charges that relate directly to recreation, January 1st is not ideal for us. We would prefer to have a later date as to late summer/fall. For example, such as September 1st, when this will be to accommodate the sport user groups as well as to align with the school calendars. So we'll be starting to do our assessments and our comparisons with other communities such as Brooks and Drumheller, Okotoks, et cetera, in the new year. And then we'll be planning on bringing any changes forward to council later on in 2022.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Wiley?
Yeah, I'm not even sure if this question probably should have been asked earlier when we were looking at our recreation master plan, but because the youth center, I don't even think was one of the fees in here, but is our youth center still being operated? Is there still any services being provided through there?
Through the chair, it's currently not occupied and not operating. There's been substantial discussions with Golden Hills School Division to take over a lease of that space so that they can offer programs to some of their classes. Previous councils didn't support the youth club as it's formerly had, and with changes as a result of COVID, that was the youth hub, as we know it as, was not financially viable, and so that decision was just to kind of keep the building intact, and then to look at other possibilities. And like I said, we're exploring conversations with Golden Hills now to take over a lease of that space in 2022.
Worship Fuel, is this the time I should be asking these questions leading up to the
You know,
second
that's
reading?
good, because I think that's a good clarification.
And so I'm very pleased to hear that we'll be getting an update on some of our fees and cost recovery on our rec facilities. I think that's awesome. And so we'll get a better sense of how we're doing in cost recovery compared to other municipalities. And will that include some of the Calgary rec facilities?
Through the chair, we normally compare our rates and fees with surrounding communities, and that includes Airdrie, Brooks, Calgary, Drumheller, even Cochrane, Spray Lakes Sawmill. That facility is unique because it's operated by a board as opposed to the town. The challenge is that you're not always comparing apples to apples. Some facilities, such as Genesis Place in Airdrie, has a pool, has an arena, has a field house, all within one capacity in one building. So we do our best to try to compare apples to apples. Ice time is something that's pretty consistent. Gymnasium time or field house time. When it comes down to access to a facility, that's where those access fees are a challenge, as well as sport-based instruction, such as swimming lessons and things like that, depending on pool availability and pool sizes, can sometimes be a challenge. So as I said, we do our best to try to compare apples to apples, but again, every facility and every municipality is slightly different.
I was wondering, and I don't know if I have to put a motion forward after this to do this, but I think there'd be value in doing apples to apples, but I also think there'd be some value in knowing what residents of Strathmore are paying if they decide our fees are too high at the family center, so we're going to drive into Calgary to do ice time or such a thing. So I just think there would be some value in knowing what the surrounding areas are also going to be paying in fees.
Through the chair, it's our intention to provide council with some feedback as much as we can. Every municipality does their rates and fees different at different times, but we gather that information throughout the year. We present it to council. We show some comparisons with those as much as we can, apples to apples, and then we make recommendations to council based on those surrounding communities and what we feel our community can support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone ready to put a motion for a second reading? Or
I have a question through the chair. Are you actively marketing our ice rentals? Like province-wide, so Brooks is short, Calgary's short, because it seems to be very empty till noon.
Through the chair, our primetime hours are probably close to 90-95% capacity. After 4 o'clock, Monday to Friday, as well, Saturday as well. Those hours are available, and we don't have much capacity to sell it to Calgary area or Okotoks area, etc. Daytime hours are the facility's most availability. We try to utilize that through community-based programming, through partnerships with the school that rent the facility for their phys ed classes, as well as we create a number of availability for public shinny, public skate, etc. So every facility struggles with daytime availability, or trying to fill daytime availability. Majority of rec facilities, that's why their prices are structured as prime time and non-prime time. And I think our facility is no different than anywhere else, that lots of available ice at facilities exist from 8 in the morning till about 4 o'clock at night. But we do try to market it. It's just that every community has availability at those times.
My understanding is there's a lack of ice for senior hockey teams, and they should be able to play during those hours.
Through the chair, we'll definitely approach any groups that have expressed interest. We do offer shinny as a drop-in slime, so there are a number of users that do utilize the facility during those times. I'm not sure I'm not sure what the capacity is, but we can definitely look at it and see if there's some more opportunities out there.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Pesef, I'm looking through the schedules here at the end, and I am familiar that the Aquatic Center offers a slightly discounted rate for residents with special needs or disabilities to access that facility. And I do notice that we don't have that same kind of slightly discounted rate available at the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center. And I'm kind of thinking specifically for the walking track here. I know in the wintertime it can be difficult, especially for people with limited mobility, to get out on the sidewalks. Slips, trips, falls, danger. And I'm wondering if the town has looked at potentially providing, a slightly discounted rate for that community, so that they can. They're often slightly lower on the income side of things and could use that break and might be able to utilize that facility. Have we looked at that possibility?
Through the chair, I know we do offer a special needs pricing for an all-access pass within that facility. I actually thought we do offer some discounted. It just may not be listed there. I'm not sure why it's not listed in that. But we do have specific pricing in all our facilities for individuals with disabilities and things like that. I'm just and that's something we'll identify and bring forward to council in September as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Peterson.
Your worship, I move that council give second reading to bylaw number 21-30, being the 2021 fees bylaw.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor for a second reading. Is there any discussion on this fees bylaw? Councillor Montgomery, Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Yeah, I would just like to offer an amendment. I would like to make a motion that we amend the bylaw to remove the monthly charge for the water meter rental.
You're offering an amendment to the motion for second reading?
Would you speak on that, Jason? What's your reason?
Oh, well, I'm presuming that it's an error to have a higher monthly charge than the weekly charge. So I think the quickest, easiest way to kind of clean that up is just to remove the monthly charge. And then that way people can just, get charged the weekly charge. Unless it is council's intent to charge people more per month than per week for the rental of those.
Through the chair, I'd prefer if the amendment suggested we just fix the math rather than delete that fee. So I think the correct number, if you want to make it the same as the weekly, would be 140 per month. But I wouldn't be comfortable with removing it entirely.
Or is it $5.33 a day, right? Like that's always sort of what we've done.
Yeah, I guess we can do math all night if we want.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to be practical.
I'm okay with it if we have a number. I just don't want to take it out.
Deputy Mayor Montgomery, so would you be prepared to adjust your motion to keep it in there, but adjust the math then, as Jamie was saying?
Yeah, I'm totally not stuck on removing that. Like I said, it seems to me we probably want to charge less per month than per week. So I'm fine with anything that causes that to happen, I guess.
Okay, so what would be the monthly amount then? Do you folks know over? I don't have my calculator fired up. Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we get the specifics of which sections being amended for the recording secretary, please?
Yeah, I believe it's page 204.
Are you talking Schedule E?
Sorry, 208, sorry. Page 208. That's... Yeah, just under construction, temporary water services. It just lists the rental fees, $6 per day, $35 per week, or $160 per month.
So then what would be the monthly fee then that would be acceptable? Are we looking at $150 a month?
Well, as Jamie said, I think it would have to be anything under 140 would put it as the same as or cheaper than the weekly rates. So I don't know, 130 per month or something like that.
$33? I think it was $159. You could, if you used $533 for 30 days, that comes to almost $160 a month, $159.90. But if you're saying that the $35 a week one is a $5 a day instead of $5.33, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, essentially, like it's almost like those two should be switched.
So why don't we just take the daily cost for a week and just multiply it by 30? It'd be $150 a month. And in a month when there's 31, it'd be paying slightly less than that.
Through the chair, I don't think it's going to have a big budget impact regardless. If we want to just do $5 a day, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Is that going to be your amendment then, Deputy Mayor Montgomery?
So essentially, we're just going to be matching the weekly rate then?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, so I guess forget I made that previous motion then.
Okay.
And I will move that we amend the bylaw to reflect a price of $140 per month, I think. Is that right?
I believe it's $150 a month.
I believe it is $150 a month. If we're looking at $5 a day charge. $5 a day charge over the 30 days. And then obviously in a month where there's 31, you're gonna pay $150 a month and you'll have a bit of a break, bit of a savings. So are you able to provide an amendment then? Can you put it into words?
All right, so we're saying $150 a month, and so that'll essentially match the per week charge.
The weekly one, yep.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we amend the bylaw to change the monthly charge to $150 per month for the water meter rental.
Thank you. So we have a motion an amending motion to adjust that monthly fee. So we're going to be voting on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, so that's the amendment part. And now we need a motion for second reading. You did, but does it? As amended. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for second reading as amended. All in favor? And that is carried.
I'll move third reading of this bylaw as well, please. Or sorry, I'll move unanimous consent for third reading, please.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor that council give unanimous consent to a third and final reading of bylaw number 21-30, being the 2021 fees bylaw. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And I'm looking for a motion for third and final reading. Mark? Councillor Langmaid.
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 21-30, being the 2021 fees bylaw.
Thank you, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We have no urgent business tonight, I don't think. Item 13, questions between councillors. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wiley.
So I don't know the procedure here. So Mark has said he's going to go ahead and look at comparing our fees and cost recovery to the rec facilities. I'm wondering, do we need to officially have a motion on that, or does it just goes to administration?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll bring the information forward to council.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions between councillors and our council statements? Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, in terms of when Mr. Wilson was speaking before council tonight, and in some of the other questions that have come up regarding stormwater, thinking that councillors should have an opportunity to undergo maybe even just a short bit of training, a boot camp on training regarding stormwater management. It's incredibly important, and it has become very, very expensive. It's a big ticket item in our community, and there are some complexities, and it's important for councillors making those decisions to be able to understand how the CSMI ties into the South Saskatchewan River Basin, the Red Deer River project, and it also has implications around CMRB, whether we're there or not. It has implications to us, and I think it's very valuable for all councillors to have information on that, Your Worship. And I'm not making any motions. I leave it in the greater purview of administration, who knows better about that process than I, and could make a determination as to whether that would be a good way forward, Your Worship. But it's just for consideration at this point. I'm I'm not directing anything unless administration has time to think about it and talk to their people, and then I can bring it back. I defer to administration, Your Worship.
So I guess, admin, you've put us through some training sessions so far. We're just seeing direction on if there could be one on stormwater, CSMI.
We'll take a look at that, Mr. Mayor. We
Thank
do
you.
have further sessions coming up.
Thank you. Any other councillor questions, statements? All right, administrative inquiries, we have none. And then all I need now is a motion to go in camera, and then if you could specify the sections that we're going in for. I did, well, sort of. No.
I move we go in camera, Your Worship.
Thank you. We have a motion to go in camera at 7:42. All in favor?
Sections?
Oh, yeah, the section, sorry, if you could.
Oh, FOIP section, I should know by heart. FOIP section 16.1, subsection B, and section 24, section 1 and A, and section 17, subsection 4, section 4, subsection F.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor for going into in camera.